The happiest times in my job was when I placed 3 kids with a family and I just walked away knowing that that was their permanent home. That day, I knew, and it was, you know. They're happily adopted now, and I keep in contact with those kids.
Currently, I just became a youth service supervisor. I used to be a youth service court worker. I've been a supervisor, it'll be a year at the end of the month. I've been a youth service worker 3 years before I became a youth service supervisor. So now I'm in the office, but I get to help other workers do what I used to do.
Well, I had been looking for a job, something that can actually fit for me, like my background, that I could actually be successful at doing. And I thought that once I learned about Child Protective Service position being available, I decided to apply because I had a history that I felt that I could connect with potential clients and their living situations and the things they go through. So that was very personal with me, and that was a connection for me.
I was a foster parent for a long time, and I ended up adopting 4 kids. So after that adoption, that final adoption, I felt kind of sad that I couldn't foster anymore. So I was like, well, let's be a social worker. So I actually went back to school specifically to be a Child Protective Service worker.
Being there to help someone, I come from a background, inner city of Chicago, played football. Teachers and school officials helped me. I had support at home, but I was a little rough around the edges. Just wanting to be there for someone. As long as I can be in someone's corner, let them know like, hey, you can do this. I'm here for you. I believe in you. Sometimes that's all a kid needs. Sometimes they don't get it at home. Sometimes they don't get it in school. But if you can just sit there and talk to them and just be that change in their life that they need, and sometimes it just takes one person saying, hey, I know you can do this, and it gives them the motivation to do it. That's my inspiration.
When I was younger, my mom and dad separated. My dad was in and out of jail and prison. My grandmother had to step up and she took guardianship of me, and she raised me pretty much up until I was about 13. So during that course of my early childhood to almost being a teenager, she had to apply and use HUD for housing, food stamps to provide food for me, clothing vouchers for me to have clothes. So my grandmother needed assistance. She was one of those grandparents who stepped up when the biological parents weren't able to care for a child. And thankfully, my grandmother did, and I didn't have to go through the system because that's a challenge for kids when they're in those tough situations, mentally and emotionally. I think that helps me with my approach with the clients because when I do meet with them and they're frustrated, and they're like, well, I've worked with CPS workers before, and this is how it was, and I just try to break that cycle, that bad cycle in their mind that, hey, we're not all bad, we can be different, we can be more understanding, we're here to help you. So.
Well, I came down to West Virginia on a football scholarship to play football at West Virginia State University. I originally started out as teaching. Like I said, I had teachers that helped push me and mentor me and put me on the right track. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. During my time at State, I took a year, I had a son, I took a year off. When I came back, I realized that a lot of the people that need help aren't always in the school. So I was looking in just every which way, and one of my friends introduced me to social work, saying like, hey, this is the kids, the populations. Like I said, not all kids go to school. So I decided to switch to social work when I came back from taking that year break, just to try to help the kids that need help. Youth service deals with clientele between 12 and 17. Sometimes we go into 21, depending if it was court ordered. A lot of our cases deal with status offenses, which is incorrigibility or truancy. We have some JD charges, which stands for juvenile delinquency. It's something you can be charged with as an adult, such as breaking and entering, battery. Our main goal is to always keep the child in the least restrictive, so I always try to keep the child in the home. Sometimes the child doesn't allow me to do that by not following the rules of the court. We also have an in-home unit. That's when a family comes into us asking us for help. We'll help set up services such as counseling, therapy. We have a new program, well, it was new when I was a worker, Safe at Home. It's one of our biggest programs. It allows us to put a service worker in the home. They're 24 hours on call, so there's a crisis worker for the family. The great thing about Safe at Home is it's not cookie cutter. The family's in charge. The family decides the direction of the plan. I love it. I put it on every case that I can, but it is voluntary. So that's the great thing about it. So it's not forced on the family. The family would want to do that.
You have to be committed, self-motivated, and willing to take on challenges. I think that's the biggest thing, I think. Because when I started this job, my background, my college degree has no dealings with social work. It's political science, business. So when I stepped into this job, I was willing to make a sacrifice to learn the job, the ins and outs, step up to the challenges. And you have to be self-motivated because a lot of times you're self-managing yourself, your workload, your clients. So you have to be able to do that.
Well, we're 8:30 to 4:30. Depending on which unit you're in the summer it's a little bit easier for in-home. They can work 8:30 to 4:30. Our in-home unit normally comes in, they can come in at 8:30 and they normally work a little bit over because we have to wait for our families, for the kids to get out of school. But most of the time it's an 8-hour shift, depending on if you're on call or you have issues or if you're taking someone to placement, which we do take our kids to placement if they go. But most of the time you'll come in here, we have 2 hours of documentation time. That's to document what happened yesterday. Like if you went to go see kids in placement, you'll document that. That's normally 8:30 to 10:30, depending if you have court or anything. On Fridays it changes because a lot of people go out in the field on Fridays. After documentation, a worker may have an MDT, may have a court hearing, maybe doing placement visits. We also help each other out, and we'll go, if I'm going to a placement, I may say, hey, I'm going here, do you have kids here? Once you get back to the office, if you can, document that time, but we do have the documentation time set up for tomorrow, so you don't, that's another thing to help with the stress, having documentation time so you know when you're gonna document. And pretty much try to plan out your day for the next day. I mean, it's social work, it changes every day. You'll have, sometimes you'll come in here not planning to do anything, and 3 cases will blow up and you'll have to go to each different house and fix the situation.
They have to be organized, they have to be a planner, but on the other hand, they have to wing it. You have to be both people, because you can plan your day and then it just blows up into the unknown. Time management is a big thing in this job because you have deadlines after deadline, in addition to keeping those kids safe.
I always say go with the flow. Like, you're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have more bad than good. But if you can just go with the flow, keep it moving. Like I said, I played sports, so I'm always with next play. Don't focus on the bad, just keep moving. You're gonna get the job done. Just keep going forward, don't look back. I always try to, with my first initial visit with the kid, I wanna let them know that I'm here for you. Yes, the judge tells me what to do, but I'm allowed to I'll give a report to the judge as well. It's in youth service, it's an attorney for the client, an attorney for the state, a juvenile probation officer, and me. We all give reports to the judge, and the judge bases their decision off of that. That's kind of like what I said earlier. I said, if you give me something to fight with, I will do everything in my power to keep you in the home, or least restrictive. Doesn't mean placement. Sometimes they do get put in our custody, but we can put them at a family member's house or a friend's house. We'd have to go do a walk through that house. But courts, depending on we have 7 circuit court judges in Kanawha County, and they're all different. Pretty much, if you know what your judge wants, as long as you got that in that report, you're gonna be all right. You're always prepared. You're never gonna a hearing's never gonna spring up on you at the last minute. We normally have about a week or a week and a half before a hearing is scheduled, and we're allowed to make reports off of that.
I think a lot of times on paper it looks like it can be a job that can be worked. But like I was saying before, the challenges, being self-motivated and being committed. Because when you step in the door here and then you get these referrals that we get, an intake, you never know what you're gonna go walk into. That it's the unknown that you deal with. And if you're willing to step up to do that, then you can face these challenges and be successful with what the job entails. But one thing that I do know when I step up to face these challenges and I go in these homes, if I don't feel safe, we do have that option to call law enforcement to do a safety check with us. At no point in time do you have to just go to a home by yourself if you don't feel safe. And that's a big thing as well too, because our safety is important.
The biggest thing for me that I would tell anyone, what helped me is I did my internship with the DHHR. I was allowed to do CPS and youth service. I learned from both of them. I knew the clientele that I wanted to deal with, and that allowed me to go towards youth service. I wanted to deal with kids who were like me growing up, that had support but may have just fell off the track and just needed someone there to get them back on track. But if you can do your internship at any DHHR, any social, mainly DHHR with CPS or youth service, you'll know what you're getting into before. I was never surprised when I started working here, which was a great thing. I knew what I was getting into, I knew what I had to do, I knew what kind of stuff I may see. You're always gonna see something new, but if you can build the building blocks to seeing what the job's about, you'll be all right.
Well, basically, they just think, hey, when we're knocking at the door, we're here to take their kids. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it, because our job isn't to just take your kids. Our job is to make sure the children are safe and to help you keep your children in the home. So if we can do that by making sure your children are safe, or if they're not safe, and provide you services, then that's what we'll do. And a lot of times parents and other relatives that may get CPS referrals think, hey, they're not going to help us, they're not going to do anything, you know, putting us down, and it's just not that way. And I try to use a more professional, soft approach with clients, because they just have that bad view of what CPS is about.
We take kids out of dangerous situations, we take it to court, and we do everything possible to put that child back in the home. You know, we don't just place kids in group homes and foster care. We look for any appropriate families that can help take care of those kids while we try to put the family back together.
Like I said, that's one of the biggest misconceptions about DHHR. No worker here wants to take a child away from the family member or take them out of the home. Our goal is always reunification and permanency with your family. My situation is a little bit different. I have to let the child know, like, hey, if it's a truancy case, we need you to go to school every day. I'll do everything in my power. I always tell the kids, I'll do everything in my power if you give me something to fight with. If you're going to school every day, doing everything they're asking you to do, I'm gonna go in that courtroom and I'm gonna say, hey, this kid doesn't need to go to placement. He's doing everything that's asked of them. They're working the services, they're doing everything. But also, it's a double-edged sword. I tell them the truth. If you don't do what I ask you to do, the judge may place you, but you're taking the power out of our hands and your hands and putting it in the judge's hands. But definitely no, we don't want to take people's kids. We want to keep them in the home with their families.
Okay. And a lot of times, you know, I knock on people's doors and the allegations in the referral aren't adding up to what they would be. For example, I had a referral that they said that they had no power, no food, no water. You know, I knock on the door, they've got the TV on, the lights are on. Those are giveaway signs before I even ask them questions. So sometimes those false reports really speak for themselves when you actually put your eyes on the home and the children. So, documentation is a very important thing in this job. I think finding the balance of doing documentation and actually doing your field work is a thing that I think as a child protective service worker that you got to find balance in, because we may be required to do 2 hours of documentation in the morning between 8:30 and 10:30, but a lot of times it can take more than 2 hours to do documentation. For example, for me, I do my required documentation between 8:30 and 10:30. A lot of times I may even come in early to get a head start on my documentation. So I may come in at 7:30, 8 o'clock. And if I come in at 8:30, I may even document in the evening, because the work is so great, and the clients that we meet and the collaterals that we meet and interview, there's so much information to put in the computer, and depending on how fast you are with the computer and a keyboard, you may need a little bit more time. So usually if I do two, I may do two in the afternoon as well. So 4 hours documentation and 4 field work, because there's balance in that. If you're just doing 6 hours of field work and 2 hours of documentation, you're going to be having a lot more field work that needs to be documented than you're putting time for yourself. Back to self-management. if you self-manage yourself, you'll be able to find that balance. So if you're willing to be a child protective service worker, you got to be able to use the balance in that, because balance is very important as well in this job. And I find that every day. And it took me some time to get acclimated with doing it. And once I did, everything runs a lot more smoother. And I'm happier when I come to my job as well.
They have to not take things personally. We do things per policy, and a lot of times my personal opinion differs from policy, but that's what we're bound by, and they need to separate their personal opinions to what our job actually entails.
For me, a good day is providing services to the clients that we deal with and letting them know that you are important. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel important. Whether it be, hey, you're doing a good job, hey, I see you're doing this, but let's try this. A good day is just letting someone feel empowered at the end of the day.
It's a challenge, and being born and raised here my entire life, I know what it was like from being a young child, from 4 or 5 years old all the way to now, at the age I am. And I think that, you know, when I went to college, and I went to college out of state, I came back when my son was born, and I decided, hey, I want to be committed to the state. I want to do some things that I haven't done. I want to give back the way that the state gave back to me. And the challenges that we face here, not just here at CPS, but across the state, it's great. It's so large that it takes a team to do it. And it's just like we're doing CPS. It's a team. It's not just one person. Because sometimes when we're doing our job, we need our coworkers to help us and stuff like that. So, but you know, the city of Charleston, it is a great city to live in, but we're facing challenges with these drugs. And these drugs are ultimately affecting not only parents and children, but other members in the community. The restaurants we go to, the shopping centers we go to, and even the value of homes, I'm sure it's affecting that as well. So it's affecting things all across the board, and we're facing challenges in CPS to face these greater number of referrals that are coming through centralized intake, because more people are being more, you know, open to seeing and keeping their eyes open to seeing the things that, you know, hey, I see a kid with his mom and she looks like she may be on drugs, or, you know, this kid's being abused. So people have got their eyes open now because of the drugs. And it's a big challenge we're facing, and we will continue to face that until, you know, things slow down.
I have a couple that I still see in the community that have aged out, and they just tell me thank you. Your words were encouraging. They'll always say, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, but I always tell them, you did this. I was just that person there to give you the tools. I mean, I gave you everything, but you're the one that decided to put the tools to work, and you made it to whatever situation you ended up in.
The one thing that keeps me going is just that I know that I was one of those kids. I know that I was in those positions where, you know, my dad was doing things that he shouldn't have been doing, that my mother abandoned me, that I had to live in places that I felt that were not safe and that were dangerous at times, and I had to make it through those times. So when I'm meeting with clients, and especially children that are vulnerable and they're in these situations that I was in, I can connect with them and I can understand them, and I can kind of help them cope when I'm talking to them, and I can share my story with them. Because I feel if I can share my story, my personal story with them and connect, they'll understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not just another worker, but I'm someone who actually has gone through things similar to these clients as well.
Believe it or not, I've seen some people out that I've taken their children into custody, and they thanked me, like hugged me and thanked me for helping them get the things that they needed corrected.